Joining us now, Tom Bonier, Senior Advisor for Target Smart. Brendan Buck, former aide to House Speakers John Boehner and Paul Ryan, and an MSNBC political analyst, is here. And so is Adam Gentleson, former Chief of Staff to Senator John Fetterman and former Deputy Chief of Staff to Senator Harry Reid. Welcome to you all. So, Tom, you sent us some notes on the early vote data, and very interesting, first of all. So let me dig in. First, you say it shows the blue wall states look strongest for Democrats so far. What are you seeing in those states to suggest that?
Well, you know, what was surprising to me is we're getting into the data in those states, and now we've got several 100,000 votes, actually millions of votes cast across just those three states. So it's a big data set. There was an expectation going into the early vote, not just by me, but by many analysts, that we'd see a big move towards Republicans, because we have to remember in 2020, there was the pandemic. Democrats were more COVID conscious, so they were much more likely to vote early. Republicans were told that voting by mail was fraudulent by Donald Trump, so they really avoided it. It was a big problem for Republicans, and they've changed their strategy. So we expected to see a big shift and to see the early vote get much more Republican. In Michigan and Wisconsin, the early signs we have is that the early vote is actually slightly more Democratic, which is surprising. And we have to keep in mind this early vote analysis isn't indicative. It doesn't mean Vice President Harris is running away with it in those states, but it's a good early sign. In Pennsylvania, Republicans have moved the needle slightly, but not nearly as much as I thought, or I think most analysts thought. Still a significant Democratic advantage among the early vote in Pennsylvania.
So, Tom, we actually spoke to Trump supporters in Detroit over the weekend to get their thoughts on early voting. And it's interesting what they had to say. It's anecdotal, but take a listen.
I've always voted the day of, but now I'm considering voting earlier because I understand it helps out the campaign.
Why did you choose to vote early this time around?
Because we wanted to make it too big to rig. We wanted to vote early and make sure our vote was banked and make sure that we could turn out more votes for Donald J. Trump.
I'm going to vote in person on Election Day.
Why are you going to?
Because I don't trust the system.
What do you say to people who don't trust the early voting process?
I don't really have so much to say. I think that, what happened in 2020 was interesting. So I think that they put some measures in place, and I think it should be trusted.
So I wonder what you think about what you're hearing as you compare it to the early data you're seeing. Obviously, these are probably Republicans. They're Trump supporters, and you can see a little bit of a mix of age there.
Yeah, you're seeing some movement. And again, those stories are interesting. It's interesting that you're in Detroit, because in Detroit, it's actually where we've seen the biggest increase in Democratic votes. In fact, Black voters in Michigan are now a larger share of the early vote, almost 2-point share compared to this same point in 2020. We remember what Donald Trump said about Detroit, where he made disparaging comments a couple of weeks ago, actually right as the mail voting was starting. So perhaps that's having somewhat of an impact on these numbers.
Yeah, Brendan, the rest of the country could end up looking like the city of Detroit, something along those lines. But I wonder if you think at this point, looking at this data, should Republicans be concerned by this strong showing for Democrats in the blue wall states?
I don't know if you'd be concerned yet, but it's certainly interesting. I mean, I think you have to go state by state. I think party infrastructure is a big part of the equation here. In Michigan, the Republican Party there is a dumpster fire, so it's not surprising that they haven't figured it out. If you look at a state like Georgia, though, you've seen a lot of Republicans early vote so far, and that's where you've got Brian Kemp as the governor and a much more sophisticated political operation. While Donald Trump himself has obviously been quite inconsistent in his messaging on early voting, the reality is that there's a lot of machinery of the campaign that is trying to change that and encourage voters. I'm glad that you caught that one voter talking about too big to rig. Ironically, a lot of the Republican messaging is we don't trust the system, so you have to come out and vote in such large numbers that they can't steal the election. And they've actually found that is one of the things that have been most receptive to Republican voters. So the big struggle, of course, is just convincing people to put trust in the system. And of course, that's been hampered by their own candidate.
Yeah, whenever you hear a voter repeat your messaging, that's a good day for people who run campaigns, without a doubt. You know, Adam, the Harris campaign has put a big focus on reaching out to black men. There was a ton of events just last week alone. What do you think about these early numbers as it relates to black voters in Detroit, black voters in Michigan? And I wonder if that says to you their message might be landing.
Well, that's the tricky part about early vote, right? Is you see the numbers by party registration, but you don't know how these people are actually voting. So in most cases, you assume that Democrats are voting for the Democratic candidate. And that's true. You know, Kamala Harris will win 85, 90, something like that % of Democrats in this election. What these numbers don't tell you is, are there any registered Democrats who are breaking away and voting for Trump? And so when you see those numbers demonstrating black turnout in Detroit, it tells us that black turnout is significant, and it certainly seems to be in a good place overall, which generally you would say is a good sign for Democrats. What those numbers don't tell us is whether any of those folks who you might expect to vote for Democrats are actually breaking away and voting for Trump. Harris has been putting a big focus on maintaining her high levels of support with black men. I'm optimistic that those efforts are going to be successful. But that's the tricky part about early vote is you can see the party affiliation, but you can't see the vote. And so you're left to do some guesswork and try to piece things together based on other pieces of information. So
I wonder, Brendan, given we showed Steve Kornacki reporting on this earlier, given the problems, let's call them problems, that some of the polls have had, obviously in 2016, but some in 2020 as well. If you think that there are that are pretty dependable in early voting that either campaign can take away from.
Well, I think maybe the interesting part for Republicans is they are trying to persuade what we call low propensity voters. The Trump campaign has been built around turning out people who are potentially new voters, and talk about younger voters, a different demographic makeup of their coalition than usual. And so what that requires is a lot of education into the system of how to vote, how to actually register, how you can, all the different ways that you can vote. And they're spending a lot of time and energy trying to educate those people because it's a risky strategy. They, instead of going after more reliable groups like, we talked about the Nikki Haley voters who are high propensity voters, come out and vote every election, they have embraced a completely different approach. And the question remains, can you not only reach those voters, but then get them to turn out? And I think they're actually trying to do that in a lot of early voting as well.
Adam, on top of the presidential race, there are 2 states where voting starts today, Texas and Florida, that have critical Senate races. Do you look for anything different in early vote numbers when you're looking at a Senate race as opposed to a presidential?
Not really. I mean, in our partisan political era, the top of the ticket candidate tends to track pretty closely with the other statewide races. So I'm sure the All-Red team is looking at these numbers, and the things that they are seeing that they find encouraging are the same things that the Harris campaign is looking for to find encouraging as well, and vice versa in terms of looking for worry spots. So generally, both races, the presidential race and the Senate race, are going to have similar turnout strategies, similar strategies about who they want to turn out and who they don't want to turn out. So I think, good news for All-Red is good news for Harris and vice versa. The one thing is, I think All-Red is probably trying to flip a little bit more of soft Republicans, independents, and moderates his way. That is probably accounts for the differential why he is polling better against Cruz than Harris is polling against Trump. So there's probably a little bit more emphasis from their campaign on turning out those kinds of voters. But generally, good news for All-Red is going to be good news for Harris as well.